We've talked a lot about Democrats hoping to flip the Senate this year. And while Republicans may be playing defense in that chamber, they are hoping to gain some seats in the House. But Amber Phillips writes in the Washington Post that goal may be tough to make because, quote, the political environment is not what Republicans were hoping for going into this election. President Trump is polling poorly, threatening to take Senate Republicans down with him. Amber is a reporter for The Fix at the Washington Post, and she joins me now. Hi, Amber. Great to have you with us. So you list the top 10 House seats most likely to flip this year, including ones Democrats just won in the 2018 midterms. Which seats are those?
Yeah, well, I think if you talk to Republicans and say, what are you most focused on this year? What they'll tell you are there are seats that Democrats won in 2018 surprised both parties, even Democrats, in places Trump won by double digits just a couple years earlier, like Iowa, a rural district in New Mexico, South Carolina. Democrat Joe Cunningham became the first Democrat to represent that area in more than 30 years. Oklahoma as well. These were some impressive wins by Democrats. And Republicans, when you talked to them a year ago, said, okay, that was a good year for Democrats. They rode a wave, but these wins were flukes. Let's kick them out in 2020 because these are truly conservative Trump districts. That's entirely a possibility. I think it's a possibility Republicans pick up a few House seats this year, but it just doesn't look like the majority is in play. You know, there are 30 seats Democrats hold that Trump also won. And if you look at the map and the polling, it doesn't seem like right now Republicans have a chance to take back those 30, which is what they need for the majority.
So then, Amber, the Republicans trying to flip those seats, are they significantly changing their messaging from 2 years ago? Because if it didn't work 2 years ago, is it likely to work now?
All right. Well, yeah, we're in a different environment than we were 2 years ago. And the main difference is President Trump is not nearly as popular with voters in these suburban districts, which is where these fights will be happening for most of these House races, than he was 2 years ago, and certainly 4 years ago when he won a lot of these suburbs. So what I hear some of these Republican candidates talk about is what worked for Democrats in 2018, which is health care. President Trump says it a lot, and they echo it. Let's find a way to protect people's pre-existing conditions, especially in a pandemic. A number of them are trying to run local races, not talking about Trump as much. But there are still some of these districts, the ones I mentioned earlier, Trump is still pretty popular. So Nancy Pelosi has actually said, of course, the top House Democrat, she's worried that there could be some of these competitive districts where Trump is still popular no matter what the Democrats hold, and they struggle to keep in 2020 as a result.
Are Democrats confident that they may be able to pick up more seats this year, perhaps not in those districts, but in others?
Democrats are optimistic. I think a little more so than I would be at this point. I mean, look, they won 40 seats in 2018, again, in some really tough districts. And then if you talk to them, they say, no, we're going to pick up more. Their calculation is that Republicans have just lost the suburbs. They're going off one election cycle. I need more data before I can say that, but we certainly see Trump not polling well in these suburbs. And then the competitive races that I have listed are in places like the Dallas-Fort Worth area that used to be very conservative, or conservative districts outside Atlanta. These are suburbs that have changed drastically from like white, traditional, conservative neighborhoods to majority non-white in some of these areas. And that's why Democrats think they'll hold onto the House for a while and are optimistic they could pick up even more seats. They just think the dynamics of America favor them right now.
So is the Republican down ballot tension that some of these, Republican politicians may be having with the White House, is that behind the tension that is surrounding Republican Party leadership in the House right now, with Congressman Matt Gaetz calling on Congresswoman Liz Cheney to step down from her role as House Republican Conference Chair? He believes that she's breaking a bit too much with President Trump. Is that what's going on here?
I think so. I think this isn't a coincidence that this remarkable confrontation that got reported out pretty quickly and then tweeted by Matt Gaetz himself is happening right as President Trump risked losing re-election. And so Republicans are forced to imagine what a future could look like without him. And there are totally different ideas among Republicans on what that means. Of course, you have like the never Trumpers, people like the Lincoln Project, or former Ohio Governor John Kasich saying they'll support Biden. And that's the future of how to reorient the Republican Party. You have people like Liz Cheney, who is a House Republican leader, a conservative. She's certainly not someone I would label a never Trumper, but has spoken out in specific instances against the president. And that's not good enough, or that's too, I would say that's too disloyal for people like Matt Gaetz, who seem to be calculating, even if the president loses re-election in November, that there's still Trumpism that is going to dominate, not just be a part of the Republican Party, but dominate it into the years to come.
That will be the debate, I'm sure. All right, well, Amber Phillips, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.